Hi there. Can you all hear me in the back? Is it good? Okay, volume's good? You can never quite tell. Excellent. All right, so I'm Andrew Burke. I'm an independent local software developer. I do a lot of business software, a lot of Ruby on Rails, JavaScript. I do some teaching in Lighthouse Labs as well. And I also do a fair bit of iOS work. And I was actually, before I got into technology, I actually have an MA in English literature. And so I've always been really fascinated by the sort of the crossroads of technology and culture. So it was really exciting for me to get the chance to work on this project that's coming up with Halifax's Azupa Theatre to do this really interesting project. And this project is called This Is Nowhere. And what is it exactly? Well, we're going to talk about that in the rest of the session. But it is basically a theatrical experience that uses smartphone technology and apps is central to that experience, is a main part of working with it. So I've been brought in to do the software side of this and to work with the writers and the directors and the actors and everybody and to help combine and collaborate with this interesting, really unique theatrical production. And it's easy to sort of assume, well, theater, right? This is people standing around talking at each other. Technology is something that must be, putting a smartphone to the theater must be something really new and different. Well, in fact, technology and theater and drama have gone hand in hand for about as long as there has been theater and drama, all the way back to, for example, ancient Greece. This is the theater of Epidaurus in Greece, and this has seating for 14,000 people, but it is so perfectly designed that you could light a match down at the stage and people can hear it in the back row because it's so perfectly engineered by the Greeks. And in fact, this room itself was obviously very clearly inspired by the same kind of science of acoustics and sort of the rounded shape of the seating to have a similar effect. Luckily, I have this microphone, which is helping me a lot. But they didn't have microphones back then, but what they did have is these amazing masks they worked with that not only exaggerated their facial expressions to make people able to see in the far back row, but it also, you can sort of see here, there's a bit of a hint of it, the mouth is actually shaped inside to amplify the voice. There's a whole bunch of sort of funnels and things like that that actually provide, just amplification without having to have lots of electronics or anything. So there's a lot of technology even in the very early days, the very beginnings of theater. And in fact, the idea of deus ex machina, you've probably heard of, that's a Latin term for actually a Greek concept originally that they had in Greek theater, where you'd have a god would show up from the machinery, right, and resolve the situation, whatever's happening in the show. And the machinery is actually a series of cranes and such, where you could actually bring the god in standing on a cloud or flying in a chariot being pulled by dragons, which is what we've got here from Medea. This obviously, just the term itself implies that they had quite sophisticated technology going into just the very, very early drama, like from over 2,000 years ago. And then, of course, as times changed and technology advanced, theater advanced as well. So you've heard of the term limelight, right? Being in the limelight, getting in the limelight. Well, limelight is actually a chemical light that was first used before electricity. It was around 1830 when they started using it. And it was super, super bright. And what was great about it is you could actually put it in a tube and put a lens in front of the tube, and you could make a spotlight. And so spotlight suddenly changed the whole way you had to think about, that you could think about putting people on a stage, because there was always a complicated art to figuring out where to make people pay attention to on stage. Where's the important action happening? Well, with the spotlight, it sure makes it a lot easier. You shine a big bright light, use a limelight, and shine it on the person, and then that gives you your actual focus. So this changes the way you could actually work with how to do your choreography on stage and your blocking. And though as technology improved and things moved on, by the time we got through the 20th century, there's things like Phantom of the Opera or whatever, where you've got mist stage effects on stage, you've got floating pieces of machinery that move around, you've got candle lights, you've got projections. And now in the 21st century, this is from Robert Lepage's version of the Ring Cycle. You've got these amazing big sets with all sorts of mechanical pieces that move. Each of them have projections on top of them with video and moving elements and amplification, and it's really quite sophisticated, all the technology. And theater has always reflected the technologies that have been used at the time. And can't think of any other bigger technology that's impacting the world right now. I think we can all agree, especially here at PodCamp, than these things, right? An internet-enabled mobile application computer, a phone, a smartphone, right? And like almost everywhere else, smartphones and other similar kinds of technology had been disrupting the world, like we're disrupting business, disrupting commerce, disrupting culture. And the Zupa Theater has actually been a big part of disrupting theater and the idea of what theater even means. You know, it's not just everyone gets together, sits in a big dark room, there's a curtain that comes up, and then people start reciting things from the script, and then the curtain goes back down about 2 hours later. Zupa Theater has been doing a lot of really cool, interesting things. So, for example, some recent ones include Pop-Up Love Party, where they adapted Plato's Symposium and turned it into a restaurant event with themed gourmet cuisine done for each section, with actual and thematically connected food and drink pairings for each philosopher that comes up and talks about things. There was projections, there was dance music, there was lots and lots of audience interaction. It became this really amazing sort of communal experience, talking about love and meaning and truth and all that. They had another one we just did last year in December called At This Hour, which is basically, for the script, they used the deposition of the captain of the Mont Blanc, which was the ship that was involved in the Halifax explosion. The captain managed to escape, but then, he then turned himself in, and this was his deposition. And they actually did it with the real lines of the deposition in the courthouse, in the actual room where this happened 100 years later. So there's actually in the place with the actual lines in the actual context. So this is the kind of thing they like to do. And then another one they did last year is called the Archive of Missing Things. And this one was done at the Killam Library, just over here. And basically everyone, the audience, each were given an iPad. And they were sitting at a table like this, and the iPad had an app on it that was allowing them to explore this archive of stories and incidents and pictures and narrative, and there's voices speaking in your ears and things like that. And then as you're going through this archive and uncovering this mystery and this puzzle, actors are doing things around you, providing clues that actually help you guide your way through the archive. So there's an interesting mix of technology and a theatrical performance. And so the next step, sort of mixing all of these things together, is This Is Nowhere, which is, as it says here, take part in a, and I'll read it from here, take part in a unique quest that lies between the imagined and the real. Halifax is the stage with live performance hidden around you. One part immersive theater and one part scavenger hunt. This Is Nowhere is an experience unlike anything that Halifax has ever seen. And it's coming up in September 2018, so it's still quite a ways away. But we're already, obviously building a lot of the things and trying to figure things out. So one of the things I wanted to get, I signed up to do this PodCamp presentation was to help give me a bit of a deadline to really help clarify some thinking I've had. And some of the technology is coming together. I know some of the writing is coming together. This is still sort of a work in progress, but I want to sort of show you some of what we're thinking. So the idea of This Is Nowhere is that it takes place in multiple locations. The whole downtown becomes actually the theater space. There's going to be lots of places where there's different performances happening kind of all the time. And each audience member will have their phone with them. Either they'll be given a phone or they'll be able to use their own phone. We're still figuring out some of those details. Depends on the technology. But then they will be guided, each in an individual sort of way, to different places where the different performances will happen. And some of them will be huge performances, other ones will be very, very intimate. And then they'll then move on to the next space and to the next space. It becomes, and it's not going to be just immediate directions, it's going to be sort of clues. So you're going to be sort of building up these assumptions on where to go and trying to find out where the next things are. And it's sort of one of the things we've been thinking about is it's a little bit like Pokemon Go. There's going to be locations where things happen, but instead of picking up, rat-a-tats or whatever, you're going to have some kind of a performance or an experience of some kind of a scripted thing. Each person's going to have their own unique route going through the show. Nobody's going to be able to see all of the different stations. There's going to be a whole bunch of them. There's no way you're going to be able to see all of them all through the course of the show. So everyone's going to have, and they're going to be going through them in a unique order. So everyone's going to have a totally kind of unique personal experience of what they saw and what they went through. So it's going to be a really interesting, unique, different way of doing things. No two experiences will be the same. And one of the other things about these, some of these are going to be huge, epic, sort of large set piece kinds of performances, and other ones are going to be something as simple as some people just talking in a restaurant. And this is one of the things that the folks at Zupa have been really interested in, is called ambient drama, where it feels like it's just, you're overhearing a really interesting conversation happening. And this is obviously not the kind of thing you can do if you have 300 people suddenly showing up and having to watch a space. But if you have just a handful of come in because the app told them this is the 5 minutes where this is going to happen, you can have a really interesting, unique, and intimate experience about how a dramatic experience. And it turns out that having an interactive, multimedia, location-aware device turns out to be the key for making this whole kind of thing work. And not only is it helping guide you there, but when you are actually in the moment of the performance, your phone will will actually enhance that with either subtitles or extra text that provides extra context, or all sorts of maybe other media that happens at the same time, all mixing and providing you this richer, fuller experience more than just looking at the little things. This one, everyone's using their phones anyhow. So many people talk about how terrible it is. You go to the theater, everyone's got their phones out all the time, right? Well, why don't we take that and make that actually part of the performance? Let's move the phones into the actual art rather than sort of being a distraction. A phone is a really amazing thing. There's all these different tools you can have with it. It knows where it is. It can know where other things are. It can pull information from the internet in real time. It knows what time it is, which is also a really important kind of aspect for this, to have triggered events that happen in time. It's a personal thing, and everyone has their own, so they're sort of got their own way of making it a very intimate, personal kind of experience. And it can record, modify, and transmit media of various kinds itself. It's a really amazing little piece of thing, and it's an amazing set of things we can now add to our stagecraft and our production ideas. So the phone becomes kind of like the guide, right? It becomes the MC. It becomes the dungeon master. If you think about D&D, it's telling you what's going on. It's giving you context, telling you where to go. It becomes the interpreter, right? It can help you if you maybe don't understand what's going on, or maybe you don't hear so well. It will provide you a text to give you context. It also becomes the program notes, right? You usually read that beforehand or afterwards. Maybe some of this would be the running commentary, sort of like the commentary track you get on Blu-rays. You can hear the director. You can sort of have that happening at the same time as well. And so there's a bunch of different things we've been trying to really figure out as we start working through some of the ideas of the technology. And one of the things we showed already, that it's kind of like Pokemon Go in a certain way. The scavenger ideas. And a lot of the things we've been thinking about is we're sort of making a game in a certain way at a theater. Archive of Missing Things had a similar set of ideas where you're solving a puzzle. Maybe there's a scavenger hunt idea where we're going to be maybe collecting bits of a manuscript or something like that. We're still working out some of these pieces and elements. But one of the things we're really working at is looking at how other games handle that so that the game doesn't get too much in the way of the theater, and the theater doesn't also get too much in the way of the game. They should ideally work together in a really nice way. We've been especially exploring Monument Valley, which is a really great iOS game that has a very elegant way of helping you get into the game and learn how things work without actually stopping and saying, okay, now we're going to enter the tutorial. First, you want to do this, and then do this, and do this. We want to also have a similar experience of sort of onboarding the players or the audience or the users. I don't even know what to call them anymore because it's sort of this whole concept keeps changing. To have all this kind of move through and make it feel natural and unforced so that we don't have too much trouble getting things working. And this is sort of a funny joke. This is Aristotle. Aristotle wrote, great philosopher or whatever. He wrote the Poetics, which for centuries has been sort of the guide for how people are supposed to write plays. There's a lot of arguing you can do about whether his ideas were correct or not, but certainly through a lot of history, people are saying, well, you must write the Aristotle way. He's got the idea of the unities and catharsis and all this kind of stuff. But we found in working on this something like Zelda, Breath of the Wild, where there's a whole lot of focus on how do you guide people to quests? How do you get someone to learn what's possible and what's not possible? How do you make things challenging without being impossible and difficult? Zelda seems to be a lot more significant to us than Aristotle. This is my one mandated bit of ridiculous keynote slide animation that I always do, at least one per thing. And so basically for us, Zelda is much more important than Aristotle for building this new kind of drama that we're working on. And what's great with some of this is also we can react to changing conditions. We're going to be doing this in Halifax. It's going to be outdoors. It might rain some of the nights or days that we do it, right? So there might be, as often happens downtown Halifax, spontaneously deciding that there's construction, we're going to close the entire sidewalk on both sides and sort of block things off. So the idea is that because it's, these devices are getting their information from the server, we can change the stuff on the fly. Since there's so many different locations, people can get a subset of those locations, and it's not going to ruin the experience. We can have them go through a certain subset. Another side angle on this is accessibility. Because nobody's going to see everything anyway, we can actually have, if you note when you start using the app, oh, by the way, I'm not so great with hills, for whatever reason, right? Maybe you have your legs don't work, maybe you just get tired easily, maybe you're scared of heights, who knows? You can say, I don't want to do hills, so the particular locations you'll go to will still sort of stay mainly in the Barrington-Argyll kind of zone, while other people who are maybe a bit more nimble and enjoy going up and down hills all night might get more stuff that's coming up on, closer to the Citadel or down by the waterfront. So we can change the places that people can go to based on their, ability or even desire of what they want to do. Another nice thing is accessibility. Because we have the phone with us, we can do things like provide subtitles to the actual show while it's happening, or provide alternate ways of experiencing this production by using the multimedia device that everyone's got in their pocket. So that's a really nice way to change the way you have to experience theater. Another thing we're looking at that's going to be kind of cool, we're hoping, is we don't even have to have the locations be fixed, and you don't even have to know that they're going to be happening. This is an iBeacon. iBeacons are one of those things that were going to revolutionize the entire universe a few years ago, and then they sort of fell off the map, but they're out there and they work. What they are is a tiny little radio transmitter that just does Bluetooth. It has a range of a few meters. It's kind of like for your headphones and things like that. But what's great with it is that they're small and portable, and you can put them wherever. And your phone, if they're set up to recognize, each of these iBeacons has an ID, your phone can be triggered by to know that, oh, this particular iBeacon is here or nearby, and you can then play some media, come up with a message, whatever. So you can imagine you're just walking down Barrington, and somebody walks by with a green hat wearing one of these iBeacons somewhere. A little thing will pop up and say, follow the person with the green hat. You follow the person with the green hat, maybe they turn down an alley and there's a performance happening, right? So these are things that can be spun here. Follow the white rabbit, and you go down the rabbit hole, and then, drink the little bowl, drink the little thing that says drink me, and then you're in trouble. But the idea is that we're no longer stuck in a theater even, and we're no longer even stuck in an individual place. We can have things sort of roaming about and happening in real time, once again, enabled by. So I'm just going to show you a few quick demos. One of the things I sort of noted is, of course, I did note in the title of the thing, Augmented Reality. So I suspect there's a bunch of people here who are like, oh, Augmented Reality, that's cool stuff. So I am going to show you some Augmented Reality. There's a lot of live coming up. The thing I ended up doing was a little app that basically points to things. So what this does is it basically knows where you are using GPS, and it's got a library of locations it uses. So here, for example, it can tell you where things are. So here's the central library is about 1.3 kilometers this way. The Cone Auditorium is about 100 meters this way. The Killam Library is just over here, 82 meters, right? It's very close, but it's the opposite side. I'm just swiping. The Martello Tower down in Point Pleasant is 2.5 kilometers over that way. So, as you move around. So this is sort of the core little proof of concept technology to make sure we actually are able to wander the town and say, we know where you're getting closer or further away from things. We're probably not going to have specifically an arrow. We're probably going to have sort of a general direction over here, plus some clues. When you get closer, there'll be some kind of like alarm or notice, or maybe the color will brighten or something. These are all still things we're just trying to figure out. Here's the noon gun. So there's a bunch of different things, and I've been using this sort of wander around town to kind of activate this. So that's a point of the thing. That's not really augmented reality. Augmented reality is basically, who here has heard of augmented reality and has seen sort of versions of it? What it is basically it takes the feed coming in from your camera, from the phone camera. It's hello, everyone can say hi. You can see these little dots it's picking up to sort of get a sense of context. And then it overlays, there we go, a 3D object. See that little sphere? Wow. It's hanging over the desk. That, of course, is not really there. But it's keeping track of where it's using the motion sensors and the camera sensors and those little dots it's projecting to sort of be able to recognize that that sphere is there. And keep it persistent in space, which is very cool. I'm going to add a cylinder. So I have a sphere and a cylinder. I'm not going to knock my laptop off the table. There's another There's another cylinder there. And so it's really nifty. It's kind of a really cool technology. You can do all sorts of cool things with this idea of this persistence of space, and it can look quite realistic. Another great app for trying this, IKEA has a great app. They've got every single piece of furniture they've got in the current catalog modeled in the app. And you can sort of pan it around your living room and add furniture everywhere to see what it looks like. It's really cool. But a few little sort of shortcomings you'll maybe notice with this. The main thing is, and maybe haven't seen it quite happen yet, but the precision isn't very good. Occasionally we'll all just shift a bit or shift to the right. Also, it's giving you a 3D sort of sense of space, which is great, but it doesn't do any clipping. So if we go down here, you know, the objects are still sort of there, but they're not disappearing behind objects in the foreground. They're not really aware of what's actually in the space. Now, this is a technology that's improving day by day. Maybe these libraries will start to support that in the future. But right now, that's kind of a limitation. And sort of the shifting is kind of a nuisance as well, because especially for something like a performance, you want to be really precise, you know exactly what's going on when, and be able to really handle exact stuff. And we just don't quite have that there. But we're certainly thinking of different ways to allow something to happen, sort of other objects in the context. There's another library, it's sort of a hybrid of these things. What this does is it uses the same locations that I mentioned that we had in the other app, that are pointing at things. And we just have an icon that shows where that's actually pointing. So that is the Martello Tower down in Point Pleasant, is over there. And let's see what we have turned on. Of course, everything ends up being back here. That is the Sobeys on Windsor Street. I just put things in from my life. I live up in there. Let's see. There is the library. This is the city library. The new library is that way. I can't remember what that is. There's a foggy goggle. So these are the kinds of things. Oh, there's the Dow Art Center with dancers. So the Con Theater. So these are, so you can actually get a sense of this panning around in space and see what's where. Now it sort of kind of sometimes loses traction and doesn't quite know what it's doing, but actually it's doing pretty well today. But there you can sort of see we've got these icons that represent things. But the other thing is sort of, and once again, we're trying to, these are new tools, right? We're sort of building this toolbox for a new kind of theater in a sense, just like spotlights or projection screens or everything. And so another one I sort of thought about it, because these objects don't really interact with the physical world specifically, maybe we should have ghosts. So these are actual Haligonians that I picked up from the Nova Scotia Archives and the Notman portrait. There's a roller. Going to give us a talk about rowing. So you can see that they're semi-transparent. So it's kind of nice. It gives them that floaty feeling. You don't feel that they have to interact with them, right? Because they're not really there. And one of the things we're exploring in this production is voices from the past, the present, maybe the future, or something like that. Once again, we're still figuring these things out. But to have sort of ghosts kind of makes that idea more concrete, so to speak. So anyway, that's some of the app kind of ideas. So let me just play, and we're back in action. Okay, so we talked about augmented reality, and it's ideally going to be something really, really cool to use, and that's a really trendy thing. But I want to talk more about, I've always been sort of fascinated, not by necessarily augmented reality as in a specific technology where you put 3D objects in space on your little camera on your phone. I'm thinking of reality augmented, which has turned out to be something that I've kind of always been fascinated with myself in general. And it's been something that's really, I think, going to be kind of the heart of the bigger picture of what we're thinking about. Whenever I do a project that's sort of got a cultural impact, I really like to think of like extra levels on top. Like what are the bigger significances we might be implying as we're doing performance that involves these new tools. And what I kept coming across is sort of all these different ideas. So for example, we're going to be dealing with locations. Locations that have meaning. And meaning you might not notice if you're just walking down the street, right? You're walking down a staircase from a little park that's got a thing in it. What does that actually mean? Well, this is actually the memorial for the Halifax explosion up at Fort Needham Park, up in the North End. If you haven't been there in a while, they've added a whole bunch of new sort of features. For example, here they've got the names of various buildings and institutions that were wiped out by the explosion in that area. As you go down the stairs, from the monument down towards where the explosion actually was, which is, of course, now the big Irving shipyard, which is kind of unfortunate. It's this big wall. But anyway, there we go. So, Halifax is great because we have, especially for North America, quite a lot of interesting places that have history significance, some of which is kind of hidden. You wouldn't know if you weren't around. That's locations with meaning is a big deal for me. The other thing I keep thinking about is we're thinking about ways to share, like when you walk into a restaurant and you've been told, find the people in the restaurant, maybe we don't want to have people just randomly accosting all sorts of random people in the restaurant, right? We want to have some way of sort of sharing the fact that, we're part of this production. So we're working on maybe languages of symbols. So the little symbols, maybe they'd have something on the table, and maybe the people in the production the audience members might be able to bring up a symbol on their phone and show it to people. And so you have this sort of secret language of symbols you're sort of passing around between each other to sort of wake things up, which reminds me a lot of, say, hobo symbols. These are the hobo markings they leave in chalk outside houses or in buildings, sort of saying whether there's a good handout here, whether the dogs are mean, whether you can, whether the police are good or whatever, all that kind of stuff. And it's a whole secret language you wouldn't even know was there unless you knew the language you were looking for. Similar things to, for example, when, being out and queer meant you could lose your job or end up in jail. There was a lot of little secret symbols people would have, wearing green on Thursday, certain kinds of handkerchiefs in your back pocket kind of thing, that would sort of identify without, alerting the authorities or all the normals out there or whatever. And sort of these ideas of these like secret languages of meaning that you're sort of passing around as other level of reality on top. Something I find really fascinating. And we'll go back to Pokemon Go. Here's things get even, this whole world of using your phones and devices to express to explore hidden things. And this is a note outside of a Shinto shrine in Japan, back during when everything was nuts about Pokemon Go. And I'm just going to read it to you a little bit. It says, to all Pokemon trainers, Pokemon in and around the temple are paying their respects. Please don't disturb the Pokemon while they are praying, okay? Let's all pay our respects to and greet the spirits. Once you're done with that, have fun catching Pokemon. Please mind your manners and play Pokemon Go in a way that doesn't disturb people attending the temple. Please don't enter the temple buildings or go inside the stone barriers. Even if you see Pokemon inside there, those may not be wild Pokemon, but maybe servants of the spirit. Right? So Shintoism in Japan is sort of, it's, if you've seen any like Spirited Away or any of the Studio Ghibli movies, it's sort of, they're sort of swimming in a lot of this Shintoist idea. There's lots of spirits everywhere. The forest has spirits, rivers have spirits. There's spirits that you can pray to provide good luck for their various things. And so Pokemon Go basically is like, yep, this is what we're already doing. A Shinto shrine is already sort of Pokemon. Actually, a lot of the Pokemon are based on Shinto concepts and spirits themselves. So I find that sort of people are using their devices to see this hidden world that's sort of above and beyond our current world, which exactly is sort of kind of like a religious experience or a religion in a way that there's other layers of meaning and being and truth above and beyond or transcending the mundane that we have, and now you can use your little device to see them. And if we're going to start talking about religion, we're talking about religion and location. I couldn't help thinking of things like the Stations of the Cross. Most churches, a lot of churches have little plaques all around the outside. You can do a circuit. They give you the 14 different steps on Jesus being condemned and being beaten up as he wanders through, carries his cross through Jerusalem and gets eventually executed and buried. These are all, you can do a ritual of moving between all the different things around the circuit of the church. And you're experiencing sort of an action and a set of meaning in a particular location. And as you're moving between locations, it's creating this set of complete ritual. And what's interesting, of course, with the Stations of the Cross is that these are actually parallels to specific locations in Jerusalem. So people for thousands of years now have been going to Jerusalem and doing the actual Stations of the Cross to the actual places where they figured, and obviously there's a lot of debate about exactly what the route might have been, but this is more generally the current consensus of where people can go. You can actually go to Jerusalem and retrace the steps in a way that people take when they're walking around the church. Similar idea, and a lot of people will actually dress up and reenact the carrying a cross through the streets of Jerusalem. I do like that centurion on the far right. On the right, there's got sunglasses. But once again, this is theater, this is performance, this is ritual, this is meaning given to locations. And then in the church you have locations as well that are implying other locations, other places. So this is the kind of stuff I found really kind of fun. If we're talking, pilgrimages, one of the big epic pilgrimages is obviously the one going to Mecca that Muslims have, are supposed to take at least once in their life. I do love this photo of the guy doing a selfie stick. Once again, using his mobile phone to take part in a giant communal, very location-based religious ritual experience. There's a lot of, if you actually do Google image search for, Mecca selfie, there's a ton of pictures kind of like this. This one's kind of more famous. But there's something really quite spectacular about sort of the idea of, once again, very specific location and location wayfinding. What's actually interesting is the library I used for that app, the version of the app that's pointing at things with the arrow. I actually, like I said, I have an English degree, so I'm not really good at like spherical trigonometry and all that. So I actually adapted code from this Kubla direction library, which is available on GitHub. It's open source. And you can download it as a CocoaPod, which is the actual calculations so you can point to Mecca. I just use that, and of course you can use as a standard set of formulas, which you can then change the coordinates. And so that's actually, the origin of that thing I have for pointing to things is actually based on technology that's designed to help figure out where Mecca is so you know where to pray to. So once again, and this is probably, some of this code is probably going to end up at some point, somehow or other, inside the app that we're going to use to do our direction finding in ISIS theater performance. Once again, tying ritual and location-based meaning and certain kinds of aspects of religion and all these kinds of things all kind of mushing together, which I personally find kind of fascinating. But if we're talking about location and things like that, and meaning and ritual, religion is one thing, but there's also myth. And mythological and history. And so I think the Odyssey is another place where there's specific things that happen in specific places that have mythic meaning. And you can actually take cruises that go around the Mediterranean to all the different places where the Odyssey might have happened. So you can actually get on a boat and do the salad, do the fruit bar, and go to all these different places and experience the Odyssey. Hopefully in a lot more comfort than Odysseus did. You don't have to get tied to the mast or anything. But what happened, and then this comes in, once again, the English major in me kind of gets all excited. James Joyce's Ulysses is it's one of those giant, crazy, insane books that people read at the end of their English degree and then go on about forever. Or a lot of people don't quite read it. It's basically two people wandering around Dublin all day in a very specific day, June 16th, 1904. And Joyce actually meticulously recreated Dublin on June 16th, 1904, down to the weather and the transit schedules, because he wanted to recreate this very specific moment in a very specific place. And all the places, a lot of the people are actual real people from Dublin at that time, because that's where he was living at the time, and he wanted to really almost recreate it. And then from this very specific thing, of specific real places with real people wandering around from pub to pub, whatever, he puts these layers of mythological, extra layers on top. Once again, the kinds of things you might use a phone to see, these other layers on top of things. And then he has these other layers of narrative, which gets wackier, kind of get crazy. But what people have done since is they've actually started reenacting the specific wanderings of these people randomly through Dublin, because it's very specific. You know exactly where it went, from the beaches down to the pubs downtown and everything. A lot of the places are still there. And so what people have been doing is what's called Bloomsday. So every June 16th, huge crowds of people will do sort of like the Via Dolorosa or Mecca or whatever, wander the streets of Dublin, and often with actors reenacting bits from the book at every station that they go to. And so there's sort of these interesting sort of, once again, echoes of very specific literary moments done by actors wandering around the streets in the places where they more or less happen. And what's kind of interesting is people have actually started doing Bloomsday in other cities as well. When I lived in Toronto, they had one in the beaches area where actors would recreate bits. They tried to find parallel places in other cities. New York has them, I think Boston, London, et cetera, have. And they try to find parallel locations across. I've kind of been obsessed for the last while with trying to do something like that in Halifax, because Halifax we have a lot of very similar architecture to Dublin. We had a sort of late 19th century boom and a lot of institutional building. We even have a Martello Tower, which is where the whole book opens, down in the, that's why I was pointing to it in the map. So I've sort of done a few of them myself, just running around to the locations on the days and Instagramming them and tweeting about the locations, but it's something I've sort of been fascinated with. But what we've sort of wanted to build, and this is sort of coming to a conclusion of it is that I want to actually, and we're working on this, it's not just going to be a one-off thing for this one particular production. What we're hoping to do with Zupa is to try to build a toolkit for building parallel realities, right? So it's a server-side thing, a bunch of client software that runs on different devices that allow you to have locations and have triggered events at time and have this combination of location and time trigger certain kinds of media that happen, pop-up boxes, et cetera. So we're going to have all sorts of, and possibly augmented reality elements and images and things like that all interacting. So the idea is it's not just going to be this one production. We're going to have some kind of a toolkit that hopefully we can end up, working with other theater companies or other organizations to help them create their own versions of this kind of location-based thing. And so, I think of it as, I do a lot of software as a service as my, from my business work, where people are, instead of having to buy accounting software, you just rent it monthly off of a website. I like to think of this as parallel realities as a service. Instead of SaaS, it's PRAS. So even the noise you make when you realize what's going on, PRAS! Anyway, I hope that's going to become a thing. It basically, and actually the apps I've been using here, they've been coming down from a live feed from a server that I've set up that actually pulls down JSON of latitude, longitude, and position information. So whenever these little apps I demoed launched, they actually pulled live data off. So I've actually spent the day twiddling the data sets, making sure they're really nice. So there's actually a client side and a server side that let you do all this stuff. And this is just the very beginning. We're going to get much more sophisticated. But this is kind of like this idea of service-based dramatic location with ritual and religion and spiritual significance on top of it, all coming from a JSON feed and a mobile client, which is something kind of fascinating. So the big event, of course, is going to be happening in September. But one of the earlier proofs of concept I'm going to be aiming for is Bloomsday 2018, which is June 16th. I hope to have sort of an early version of this kind of software kind of running more thoroughly with triggered events at specific places and specific times. So hopefully we're going to have some of this stuff happening. It won't necessarily be full theatrical productions or anything, but there might be, I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen yet, but there might be images showing up on your phone if you're close to a place. There's a bar of soap keeps popping up in the book. A jar of meat comes up a lot of them. So these objects might show up, or you might be every prompt to say something that's a line from the book or something. I'm not sure exactly what. But I like to have this idea as sort of an early draft of this kind of technology. And of course, the big final thing is going to be in September. This is Nowhere. And the website for that is thisisnowhere.ca, and there is a mailing list if you want to sign up for that and get more information about it as this gets going. But it's going to be a pretty special, pretty epic event in September, and probably like nothing anybody's ever really seen before. So that is that. There's my information. And if you have questions, I'm not sure when the next time slot is. I think it's in 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, you have some time.
Okay, we have time for questions, and in fact, Alex over here in the corner is one of the other people at Zupa. He's actually giving more of the theatrical side of the concepts, so he's also available to get questions. Thank you.